Hello everyone, here is Wilson Casado. I'm coming to you today because recently we had the chance to know someone extraordinary. So extraordinary that I decided to do a very special episode of the Changing the Game. Today we have the privilege to meet Shawna Pandya. Shawna is a physician, aquanaut, speaker, martial artist, advanced diver. Oof, the list is long. Skydiver, pilot in training, a specialist in immersive medicine, and the list goes on. She is astronaut 002 at the IIAS. I hope you have fun listening to Shawna's stories. This episode of Changing the Game is very kindly sponsored by The Bakery and Visagio. Hello everyone. I'm very fortunate today to be here with Shawna Pandya. So you heard about her profile, so that's a privilege. So gratitude on asteroids. So it will be hard to match this after we have this done. So, and I'll jump straight to it. So you're an astronaut. So you tell the story of a young girl that got inspired by a female role model. Right? Can we start with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. My name is Shawna, and I am Canada's first named commercial female astronaut. And this is the culmination of a lifelong dream. So as you correctly alluded to, I was a kid who grew up in the 90s and watched Canada's first female astronaut, Dr. Roberta Bondar, fly to space. And that was this kind of aha moment for me where I realized that Canadian women can do that. We can go to space. Okay, so that's the first realization that I had. So then I wanted to be like Dr. Bondar. So I said, okay, I just need to study what she studied. So she's a neuroscientist, a physician, and an astronaut. So I thought I'll just go study and be a neuroscientist, a physician, and an astronaut. And when you're a kid, you oversimplify things. So I thought, okay, well, I'm halfway there being Canadian and female. So I just need to go do those three things. And that kind of set me on this lifelong path towards pursuing astronautics.
So we cannot get, from your response, we cannot do anything else than say, okay, one thing is a young girl, 12-year-old, to think about that. Like, that's my dream, that's what I want to do, and etc. So looking, in hindsight, I look at you today and what you accomplished, and etc. So we all are like in awe. So this is superhuman. So maybe not. So that's the question. So every 12-year-old girl has the right and should be able to dream to be anything.
Absolutely, absolutely.
How you execute that? So, I'm Canadian, I'm female, but I just need to do those three things. But we know that those three things are very hard. So tell us a little bit about the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there was this unconscious story of representation that was there, and that representation matters. And I never thought about it conscientiously because I was growing up in Canada at a time when our population, growing up suburban, was not very diverse. So I was the only one who looked like me, but I never actively thought about it until many, many years later. I was giving a keynote in recent years. I was talking to undergraduate STEM women, and then this young engineering student, she was of South Asian background like myself, and she came up to me and she deliberately said, seeing someone like you who looks like me makes me realize that I can do this. And that was just this transformational moment for me where I realized that, representation matters. If you can see it, you can be it. So even with this story about Dr. Bondar's journey inspiring me, it was this unconscious story of realizing that Canadian women can be in space, and that representation did matter.
Right. So there is one thing that you didn't mention that from that to get it done, it's hard.
Yes.
It's hard, super hard.
Yeah.
The journey is not easy. So where that strength comes from, and you probably top class student sort of thing. So talk about that grit, where that comes from.
Sure. Yeah, I'll point to two things there. So when you grow up, the world you grew up with is your normal, no matter how crazy or zany or dysfunctional your family life might be. You just assume it's normal and that everyone is like that. So my parents are immigrants. They moved from India to Canada in the 80s. They packed up all of their belongings in 2 suitcases and decided to start a new life, moving from beautiful, sunny, tropical India to the middle of nowhere, Canada, in the middle of winter. I sometimes still question my dad on that life decision, and started a new life for themselves. And, there is this kind of thinking that when you move to a new country, you're starting a new business, or in my dad's case, a practice for himself as a physiotherapist. You don't just work hard, but you work immigrant hard. And my parents took it a step further. And so I like to say I learned to work Pandya hard, because I grew up thinking that the normal workday was 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. And it always shocked me when I later on went to school and people would say, it's 5 o'clock, I'm done working. I had no idea that that wasn't normal. But I think that really set the stage early on, that if you want to do hard things, you have to be prepared to put in the work. And it really solidified for me that regardless of what you're born into, regardless of what talent or wealth or education you're born into, a work ethic is free. It costs nothing to show up and become the hardest working person in the room.
That's awesome. Does that come across as well because we know from your profile that you're not only a doctor, an astronaut, but you black belt in martial arts.
Mm-hmm.
So you love your sport. You out there. You do other extreme sort of exercises.
Mm-hmm.
So is that a connection there? Is that a reason? And
yeah. So when I was younger, when I was quite small, I read this essay of, it was in this book of inspiration of how people got things done. Someone had just sat down one day and decided to make a checklist of all the things they wanted to do in their life. And so I thought, I'm 10, what have I done in my life already? So I sat down and made a checklist for all the things I wanted to do in my life. And that included getting a black belt in a martial art. And then by the time I was 15, I kind of thought back to that checklist and thought, what have I done with my life? I haven't made any steps towards getting a black belt in a martial art. So then there was this Taekwondo dojang that was very close to my dad's physiotherapy clinic. And so it worked out perfectly that this was something I wanted to do. So after school, I would head over there. And then when I was done, I would head over to my dad's physiotherapy clinic. And so, Taekwondo was fantastic, not just because of the community, not just because of the Taekwondo family I developed. Even now when I'm in town, I can still go back to my dojang, but the principles of Taekwondo. So there's what we call the 5 tenets of Taekwondo, and they go courtesy, integrity, perseverance, self-control, and indomitable spirit. And those are what it takes to fulfill that journey to black belt. The real training and the real strategy and fighting and competition starts at black belt. So that's where that indomitable spirit comes from. But later on, when I learned what this concept of resilience or mental fortitude or grit is, it's something that can be learned, but it's something that's definitely built up in Taekwondo and martial arts practice. And so when we talk about what instills resilience, there's many models out there, but the one I ascribe to looks at resilience as a 5-part model. So it involves positive self-talk, telling ourselves that we got this when the going gets tough. It involves having a positive social support network, so relying on our friends and family and team to hype us up when we're down. It's impulse control, resisting that urge to give in to negative thoughts, or resisting that urge to give up when something seems too big or too tough, breaking things down. So not just saying, I want to be an astronaut, but what is the first step I need to do today? Maybe I need to enroll in a science degree. Maybe I need to learn about what astronauts actually do and live, and how living and working in space is. And the final part of that is mental rehearsal. So we often hear about that in space or in sports. We hear about athletes doing visualization, visualizing themselves winning, and that's part of it. But mental rehearsal also involves not just preparing ourselves for the best case scenarios, but the worst case scenarios, so that we're prepared when we encounter those scenarios in real life.
I saw in another interview or conversation that you talk about, someone asked about naysayers, and you did mention something that struck me as super interesting, because you talk about, there are the external naysayers that people that say, I'm never going to do this dream, and etc. But you talk as well about your internal self-belief about that, because along the journey, we do that ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So in life, we're always going to have two types of naysayers, the external naysayers and the internal naysayers. And very quickly with the external naysayers, decide how much energy you're going to spend on the external naysayers. We only have finite amount of energy, and sometimes the education or the conversation is worth having, but not everyone has equal say in your life. And so not every conflict is worth getting into, and not every naysayer is worth engaging. But when it's yourself, that is definitely a naysayer worth engaging in, because sometimes we can get in our own way and we can become our own worst enemy. And so I think, there's a lot of value in discussing the imposter syndrome because it affects almost all of us. All of us have sometimes had this moment where we walked into a place and thought, I don't belong here. I'm the least qualified. Someone made a mistake by appointing me in here. And the first week of medical school is definitely like that. We're all secretly wondering, did the dean make a mistake? Are they going to kind of come in quietly and pull me away? And because you're with all these high achievers, and astronautics is like that too. And so the way to deal with the imposter syndrome is both dissecting that feeling and saying, is there merit to this? If the answer is yes, why is there merit to this? Do I not feel smart enough? Okay. Is it because I don't read enough? Okay. Well, then I'll read more. And if is it I don't feel smart enough? Is there merit to that? No. Okay. Then I've acknowledged that feeling. Now I'm going to put it to the side. But then the other way is to view these opportunities that we don't feel ready for as a growth opportunity, because someone somewhere believed in us and our ability to grow into this position. So I might not be a doctor yet when I get into medical school, but someone believed that I had the potential to be a good, if not great doctor. Someone believed that I had the potential to be a good, if not great astronaut. And so I will rise to the occasion. I will use this opportunity to push my own limits and become better.
We talk about innovation in Change the Game podcast, so I'm super passionate about it. So I know that innovation is involved to your job as an astronaut. So what is that you do as an astronaut?
Yeah, so I am flying to space with the International Institute for Astronautical Sciences, and innovation is actually built into our program because once upon a time, the only way to get to space was as a agency selected astronaut. So with NASA, with the European Space Agency, with the Canadian Space Agency. And now in this day and age, with the rise of commercial spaceflight, we see people go as employees of companies to test out the ride, to as paying tourists, and we do it through research at our institute, which is the first and currently only institute in the world to leverage commercial space for research. We truly view space as the next great research laboratory, and it also involves being resourceful. So innovation isn't always high tech. It's thinking differently, it's reframing, and it's doing what you can with what you have. And this is something that I impart to my students. I teach space medicine, I teach austere environment medicine in resource limited settings, and I also teach in a graduate level course back at my university, the University of Alberta, called Technology and the Future of Medicine. So innovation and changing the game is very much part of that conversation.
Excellent. So so far I ask a lot of my, maybe more formal, boring questions.
Yeah.
Right? But the idea of being with an astronaut is super awesome and cool. So what could you share with us about the cool part of it? So what is awesome about space and being an astronaut?
Oh gosh, how much time do we have? So the science, we learn a lot about studying human physiology in an extreme condition, and we can actually use those insights to help inform healthcare on Earth. So every single physiological system is affected by the spaceflight environment, whether we're talking about being in weightlessness, 0G, or if we're talking about being in a high radiation, high stress, isolated, confined environment. So the technologies that we use to keep astronauts healthy in space can also be used for our most resource limited locales on Earth to help enable healthcare. We learn a lot about everything from bone health and osteoporosis, which affects millions on Earth, to neurodegenerative diseases. So there's a lot of innovation. And now we're seeing pharmaceutical companies leverage the weightlessness of space to change how we manufacture drugs and use those insights to make drug properties better on Earth. So there's that innovation pathway. There's the teamwork aspect. So the teams I work with, both as an astronaut and as an aquanaut, have become like family. We message each other every day. They're the only thing better than flying to space is flying to space with your friends. And then there's also the transformative, the philosophical aspect. So there's this concept in spaceflight called the overview effect. And that's this concept that when we have the privileged viewpoint of watching our planet in its entirety and seeing our fragile blue little marble borderless and as whole, it's quite transformative. And for me, I view it as an amplification of who we already are. So think about how powerful that is. Imagine I were to tell you that there's a set date in the future which you have the opportunity to take the best possible aspects of yourself and amplify them. How are you going to start working towards that today to make yourself better, to amplify the best parts of yourself? And when you come back, how are you going to use it to serve science and humanity and exploration? So I have that opportunity, and I'm very mindful and grateful for that. And it's something that I keep in mind with me as I prepare for spaceflight.
There is so much in what you're saying that comes back to that sort of work ethics that you mentioned in the beginning. So that sense of service, a sense of purpose. So that's so refreshing to hear. Let me close it. So let's see, we promised to do it short. So I know, there's a lot of people want to talk with you. Can you leave a message for young people? The future is so different. So when the thing that I mentioned, that was talking the other day with someone is that when I was posed the suggestion of you need to do engineering, legal, law, or medicine, and I chose engineering, so that one. It was more clear the job opportunities that I would do in the future, although it changed a lot when you grow up. Today is not clear at all. So today, people go to university maybe not knowing what they're studying for is what's going to be there when they go out. So it's a mix of that sort of dreaming and how you think about that sort of uncertain environment. So what would be the message for the young people?
Absolutely. This is the best possible time to be alive because the era in which we're living, the technologies and the accelerating rate of change and enactment of those technologies is offering a lot of opportunities. So between machine learning, between industries that didn't exist, big data management, app development, those things weren't jobs when I was a kid. The access to new platforms. So this is the era of unlimited internet access. We can learn anything. We can broadcast ourselves. And space is the next great platform. With the rise of commercial spaceflight, it'll no longer be the domain of the engineers, the pilots, the scientists, but maybe it'll be the domain of the athletes, the entrepreneurs, the artists. And so what are you going to do with that access? And so decide what it is you want to do, decide what you want your impact to be, and then work really, really, really hard to get there because it costs nothing to become the hardest working person in the room. And then act like you belong there because you do. Make space for yourself.
Thank you very much. So my feeling of gratitude that I'm having a talk with you is I haven't experienced that before. So you talk about inspiring young girls, but be sure that you also inspire old men.
Thank you.
To hear those reflections and to see that living experience of someone that pursuing the dream and achieving a lot. So that's awesome. And I'm sure many people in the audience will feel that coming along. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.